Then why are you just being so sweet? You're being so sweet. Do you know how sweet you're being?
Isa, you're not muted.
I was gonna say.
Well, she's being very sweet.
Oh yeah. No, you're spot on there.
The first thing I'm going to do for our class this afternoon is I'm going to drop my slides so that you all have access to them. And the second thing I'm going to do is present these slides. Awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and get into feature testing today. I do want to make a quick edit here. So yeah, I typically don't like to call anything a warm-up just because I don't really think it's truly a warm-up in the sense of like this doesn't really matter. We're just like kind of getting started. Like I do want you all to be in this discussion. So, okay, so I'm gonna put you all into some breakout rooms and I want you to talk about these questions. Yeah, I don't think I have any other explanation. I'll drop these in the chat for y'all. And we'll make some breakout rooms here. And drop these in the chat. Okay. Any questions before I send you all off into breakout rooms to discuss these questions? All right, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim. I was just looking at your message about attendance. I marked them all as present. I think we're all here. We had
Okay.
there was 22. So yeah, I think we're all
Cool.
here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was on the wrong tab and like thought I saw you doing it and then realized it was someone else is doing their class.
I think we're good. I think we got it figured out.
Okay. Like troubleshooting my desk. I don't know what's going on, but it won't go up. So
Yeah, is it a standing desk?
yeah, I just got it and like it's been fine, but I don't know. I have like these presets and I don't know. It just screwed up. So working on.
So funny story, like my internet has been so slow. So as soon as you like release us back to the break room, I have to go. But now that I updated it, it's so fast. So I hit it and I'm like, oh my God, I'm back in the room. So fast.
That is great to hear that the update is, it seems like the update is helping a little bit.
Yeah, a lot.
Yes. That is great. Heads up, I'm gonna mute everybody. Looks like your microphones came off. Cool, let's go over these together. That's not what I wanted to do. Yeah, let's hear from, oh wait, I did this earlier. Yes, so I don't recall on anybody. Let's hear from Adam. What do you think for this first question? So in setlist, what does a user need to do to visit the songs index?
They need to go to the local host URL with the path of songs.
Mm-hmm. So we'll say they,
so go to localhost.3000. I don't remember what it is.
So I'm actually gonna say here they visit /songs.
Cool.
So in our apps right now, we are developing locally on our local computer. So in that case, that URL would look like localhost 3000/songs. But as we deploy our applications, as we get them off of our computers and make them accessible to other people, this domain name right here, you'll recall from Tim's first class that this first part before the first slash is known as the domain. The domain is going to change. So typically when we're talking about like visiting things, we're only concerned about the path, with the understanding that the domain might change as the domain name of our application might change.
Cool, thanks.
Good job, Adam. Any other like questions about that? What about for this next one? What does the user expect when they visit the songs index? Sam, what do you think?
When they visit the songs index, we had a pretty good discussion about it actually, that it's very like, for us, we have a responsibility to even know what the user expects, but in general, songs index should just display a collection of songs. But like we were just talking, like the attributes that it should show from the songs, it really depends on the case-by-case thing. We as the people making this app should know like which attributes, like would we show them the song ID, you know, would we overwhelm them with this type of information? But in general, it should show like the collection of songs in some way.
Yeah, you make a lot of really good points there. So we should display a collection of songs, probably want to see some attributes related to the songs, i.e. the title. So like at the very minimum, probably want to show the title on this songs index page. But yeah, you're right. Specifics will depend on the user / developer. So yeah, us as developers, we might need to make some design decisions about what we show just to make it look nice. The user might also, like, what does the user expect? Well, it kind of depends on like who this user is, or like who's using the application, or why they're using the application. But in general, song index, probably we want to see a collection of songs, and we probably want to see some of the attributes related to them. Sam, when we say like a collection of songs, which songs do we want?
For set list, specifically to set list, it should be based on the artist.
So if I go back to my routes file here, didn't open it. So I've got my one route in here, and this is for /songs. So this, based on this route right here, if this is the page that the user is visiting, I don't see any information here related to an artist. So yes, Sam, we might build out what you're describing is more of an artist songs index. So all the songs for a specific artist. This path is just for songs. So then which songs would we be showing here?
All the songs currently inside the table.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Exactly. And we can see that if we go to our code, songs controller, we can see the way we retrieve these songs is with song.all. Mm-hmm. Yeah, great job. I think it's really good to acknowledge, like, there are some things that we probably want to see on a songs index page, but it does depend on what specifically we as developers might get some creative liberty, and the users might ask for something specific. Are there any other thoughts about this? Yeah, any other thoughts or questions? Sandra.
This is kind of related to the project in the same train of thought. Like you're kind of saying like the developer would have like the kind of say of what they think the user would want to see on that page. And one of the user stories, like the first or second one in the project, is like the parent table, like to display all of the columns And like that would include ID, created at, update at, even though they seem like weird to show a user. So like in the project, do we have liberty to be like, they don't actually want to see this? Or should we take those literally?
No, I think you can take some creative liberty and not necessarily do everything literally. So for example, parent show, then I see data with, then I see the parent with that ID, including the parent's attributes, data from each column that is on the parent table. Yeah, you're right, Sandra, that I would not necessarily interpret that as the ID and the created at and the updated at. I think this is more referring to as the attributes that we make that are custom. Because like the ID is just comes with it by default.
Awesome, cool, thank you.
Yeah, in this project, you know, there's like certain learning goals we're trying to hit here. Like we're trying to retrieve some data from the database. If you can retrieve 4 out of the, if say your table has 5 columns, if you retrieve 4 out of the 5 columns, I'm not going to say you hit any different learning goals versus getting 5 out of the 5 columns, you know? So really just make sure, like, are you doing the things that you think that we're trying to emphasize in this project? And yeah, just like you just did, if there's any other questions, just ask and we'll be happy to clarify.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions about this this first discussion? I think that was pretty solid. I think we can move on here. So let's talk a little bit about feature testing. So I am going to come back to this. This is a good like list of things. But for now, I want to talk a little bit about feature testing in general. Okay. So feature testing. What is feature testing? The whole idea of feature testing is that we are going to mimic the behavior of the user. So we're making web applications for humans to use. What our tests are going to do is we're going to through code create a fake user who's going to come in and use our application and test that them using that application does what they expect it to do. So for example, things that users might do, they might click on things, they might type things into text boxes or their browser, they might click on a button, they might expect to see something on a page. So as a user, when you go use a website, you expect certain things to happen. Even though you might not like say this out loud, in your brain, you still expect certain things to happen when you visit web pages. Really important point about feature testing. Feature tests do not need to know anything about the underlying code. So for example, if we are writing a test that we can create a new task. So we've got our task manager app, someone can go in, fill out a form, create a new task. Our feature test should not check anything in the database. The feature test should not look at the database and say, there should be a task with this name in the database now that we filled out that form, because that is relying on the knowledge about the underlying structure of your app and your database and how all that is set up. So this is an example of something we would not want to do in a feature test because it should only be from the user's perspective. If we wanted to test that a new task was created, how does a user know that from their perspective? Well, the user should visually see it in the application. So what your feature test should do is it should check if a user can see that new task on the task index page, for example. So we don't need to know anything about the underlying code. We should be doing all of our feature testing through the user's perspective. So with that in mind, how do we kind of relate this idea of the user's perspective? We do that through user stories. So user stories are a tool used to communicate user needs to software developers. So rather than having like an actual user come in and talk to the developer, like that's not very realistic. What we will do instead is we will try to write stories from their perspective and then implement those stories. They're a tool used in agile development. This was first introduced in 1998 by the extreme programming folks, which was extreme programming was kind of like I think it was like the second iteration of agile development. Can I get a quick like participant poll here? Can I get a green yes if you've heard the term agile development And yeah, give me a red no if you haven't. Yeah, so definitely some people who this is new to, some people have heard this before. That's totally fine. As a like 30,000 foot overview of agile development is this idea that we can create apps that we continually iterate on and continually improve as we go. And we constantly seek the feedback from users to develop our application. So a lot of times what happens in software development is you ask someone, hey, we're building you this app. What do you want it to do? They'll tell you, but a lot of times users don't actually know what they want. So then you'll build them something and then they'll say, oh, this isn't exactly what I want. Can you actually do this instead? And then you'll build that and they'll say, oh, well, that's not really it either. Can you do that? So working with users a lot of times is like an iterative process. The opposite of agile development is waterfall. And waterfall is where you design everything up front before you start. So this is what you might see in a government contract. We're going to take 6 months to build this big long book of all the requirements and everything, and then we're going to build it. So that's just a very quick overview of agile development. You will talk about that more throughout your time in Turing. So what does a user story do? It describes what a user needs to do in order to fulfill a function. This is part of our top-down design. What we mean by top-down is we are starting to think about this with the end in mind. So if we're writing user stories, we're thinking about when this thing works, what should the user be able to do? So think about the final version and then kind of work backwards. How do you fill in the blanks to get to that final version? So this is an example of what a user story might look like. So as a user, when I visit the home page and I fill in title and I fill in description and I click submit, then my task is saved. So typically our user stories are going to first start off with a type of user. In mod 2, we are not going to build different types of users. That's something that you all will do in mod 3. So all of our user stories will typically say as a user or as a visitor. So this line will not really matter that much for our purposes in mod 2, but that is just the structure of user stories. Then it will be followed by some sequence of tasks that they need to do. So when I do this, and I do this, and I do this. And then there should be a then statement that describes what they would expect to happen after they do these tasks. So we could generalize this as a user type, when I do these actions, then expected results happen. Okay, so I'm going to do this next to show you all what this might look like. But does anybody have any questions about what I've covered so far? Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and show you what this is going to look like. Yeah, I'll do this first and then we can take a pause. So let me put this. No? Oh, it's already here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so with writing feature tests, because this is all written from the perspective of the user, essentially what I have to do is I have to take this user story and translate this into an automated test. So the process goes from idea of what functionality we should have, then we write a user functionality which describes the process. Sorry, we write a user story which describes the process of that functionality. And then we take those text English descriptions and we put them into code. So let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to need a couple things in my app before I can use any sort of testing. So the first thing I'm going to add in is gem R Spec -Rails. And let me also open up the lesson plan because I don't expect that you all have this stuff memorized. So I'll just show you where it is in the lesson plan. Feature testing. Cool. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to add some gems. So we've got gem, R Spec Rails is the first one we're going to need. Copy borrow we're going to need as well. We're also going to need launchy. And simple cov. Simple cov is good to add. Did you all use simple cov in mod 1? Yeah, okay, cool. So we're familiar with that. Yeah, and this is all the things that I need. Okay, so anytime you update your gem file, you should always bundle to install those new gems. So I'm going to go to, where am I? Classwork, set list. So I've got my gems listed in my gem file. So now when I bundle, it should install those gems. Cool. So these are my tools that I'm going to need. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do this command called Rails G R Spec install. So this is going to do a couple things for me. We'll see in the terminal output here. It creates a file called .rspec. It creates a folder called spec. And inside that spec helper, that spec folder, it creates two files, spec helper and Rails helper. First, this .rspec file, you don't really need to touch this too much. If you install, I know some students like to install, I think it's 9cat is kind of like Pride from Minitest. So 9cat gives you like a nice fun output of like a ASCII cat, which is cool. So that's what you might use this file before. But otherwise, I don't really ever touch this file. You don't need to touch this file. Let's look at our spec folder. So underneath our spec folder is gonna, our Rails RSpec install is going to create these two files for us. The first one is the spec helper is the one I wanna take a look at. And you'll see that it says like this file was generated by the Rails generate RSpec install command, blah, 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 blah. And it just has a bunch of default configurations for us. We don't really need to change this too much. The other file is the Rails helper. And you'll notice that the Rails helper, the first line of it is to require the spec helper. So these spec helper and Rails helpers files are both loaded when your tests are run, and they contain a lot of setup configuration stuff that you're gonna need. Yeah, you don't need to really like know everything that's going on in here. Tomorrow, when we talk about model testing, we are gonna have to edit this Rails helper a little bit to install shoulda measures, but we'll do that tomorrow. So that's Rails helper and spec helper. And then, yeah, the last thing here is to start simple cov. So I actually am going to have to edit Rails helper. I lied a little bit. At the very top of Rails helper, I am going to paste in require simple cov and then simple cov dot start. And this is how we are going to get coverage into our apps. So we first have to install the simple cov gem, put it in our gem file, add these two lines to our Rails helper. Yeah, I think that's about that. Any questions on these two files, Rails helper and spec helper? Pretty straightforward. Yeah, cool. So I think I'm actually ready to start making the test now. So I think that's a good place for a break. Let's break here. We'll start back up at 1:35.
Hey, Brian. Brian?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
What's that?
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to let you know that your audio sounded a bit robotic. Doesn't affect me, but I just wanted to make sure you're aware.
Gotcha. Is it doing it right now?
We can still
Yes.
hear you though. If you can't fix it, that's fine.
Is it worse than this morning?
Better.
It's better than this morning. My audio right now is better than it was this morning.
I only started noticing it like after lunch, the cyborg thing anyways.
I think I'm gonna use this one. Does that work better?
It has static.
Yeah.
Or a little bit.
A little bit.
This one isn't robotic.
Is that better or worse?
Right now it's definitely better for me. Anyways.
Okay, we'll roll with it. We'll roll with it. I'll try and talk a little bit louder because now I'm yelling at my computer. Yeah, I think my headphones are. I think I just need to replace my headphones. So I'll need to get on that. Cool. Well, as long as you all can understand me, that is the most important thing. So let's keep going with this testing here. So now that I have R Spec installed and set up and everything, what this gives me the ability to do is to run the R Spec command from the command line. So this is the command that you're going to use to run your tests. And we can see that by default, it's going to say no examples found, finished, blah, 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 0 examples, 0 failures. So it didn't actually find any test files in here. One thing to note, and one thing that you will see me doing often, is that this R Spec command will work, especially as you are just starting to develop Rails. But as you get more different versions of, I don't want to go too in depth right now, but as you install different versions of gems, it's good practice to use this special command bundle exec before you do R Spec. This bundle exec command ensures that you're using the correct gems from the gem versions from your gem file and your gem log file. So as you get different versions, this will make sure that it's picking the right version. You will probably notice, you probably won't notice a difference between R Spec and bundle exec R Spec for now, but some point in this mod, it will probably change for you. So that is just to say, if you see me doing bundle exec, that's why. And also if you see me doing BE R Spec, that is a shortcut that I have for bundle exec R Spec. Max.
Yeah, I was just wondering, my understanding of gems has kind of changed in the last like 10 weeks. I was wondering if you could give like a brief, just like definition of what a gem is and where it comes from.
Sure. So a gem is essentially a unit, piece, chunk. A gem is essentially code that you did not write that does not come with Ruby by default. So a gem is like you can think of it as a package of code or a library of code that doesn't come with Ruby by default, that someone else wrote. So with gems, because someone else wrote it and it doesn't come by default, we need to install gems if we want to use them. So that's gems at like a super high level. And then bundler is a gem management. It technically is a dependency management system. You can think of it as a gem manager. So what we do is we list all of our gems in our gem file, and we can give some of them versions. These ones Rails all came with by default. Basically, the reason why we would want to use a dependency manager is because it ensures that all of our different versions of gems work together, and that if we, if we're trying to share code across our computers, if someone else can easily install dependencies by running a single command like bundle. So what bundle does when bundle or bundle install, it'll look at your gem file and any gems that you don't already have installed, it will install them. So you'll see that because I already have all these installed, it just says use it. But if I didn't have any of these installed, we would see them being installed. Max, does that help? Do you have any follow-up from that?
Yes, it does help. Just one other question, and maybe this isn't super important, but how, I know we can like just put gems here, but where does it get that information? Is this something that like the official Ruby source has published and stored within it, or how does it make it here?
It's this first line right here, source https://rubygems.org. So if you want to make a Ruby gem accessible from Bundler, you would have to register it on this website.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, if we just go to this website, we should see a list of all these gems. I think. Yeah, so then I could search here for R Spec Rails. And there it is. And this will give us all the info on it. Cool. Some folks, some students have done lightning talks on how to make your own gem, and it's really not as hard as you would think. So I think that is a cool thing to look into if you're looking for something extra, something to kind of like, I think it could set you apart from other, like as you think about applying for jobs, making a gem is something that we don't force you to do at Turing, so it might set you apart from other Turing students. So something to look into. Sandra.
Same topic. One of our tutorials had us do like bundle install and then bundle update. Is that necessary to run?
Bundle update is kind of this is a tricky topic. I only would recommend running bundle update if you are getting an error and you know that running a bundle update will fix it, or you have a suspicion that the reason why something isn't working is because one of your gems is out of date. So what bundle update will do for you is it will look in your, it will look at your gems and see if there are any gems that have a more recent version. All of these gems that have this notation next to it of like squiggly arrow 2.5, this is saying that we want to use this version of the gem. This one on line 15, greater than or equal to 1.3, this says we want to use this version or a more recent version if there's one available. If you don't have a version specified next to the gem, for instance, all of these ones that we just looked at, this is saying install the most recent version. And if you run a bundle update, all of these gems that don't have a specific version, it will say, look and see if there is a new version. So bundle update can potentially get you into trouble if the updated version is not compatible with your current versions. So I would say that running bundle update is not always a silver bullet. Sometimes bundle update can actually cause more issues than it fixes. So the commands that you always need to run are bundle. You always need to run bundle to install your gems. You don't always need to run bundle update to update your gems. Only run bundle update if there is a known issue that you think that it would solve. Cool. What else? Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to keep going with writing this feature test. So what I want in order to write my feature test is that I want underneath my spec folder, I want a folder called features. So from the command line, I'm going to make a directory called spec features. And this is another example of something in Rails that you do want to check the spelling of. You do want to make sure that this folder is called features. Rails will assume some things because this is called features. And I'll point that out in a minute. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to make a subfolder under this. This is just the way that I like to organize my tests. So underneath features, I'm testing my songs index. So the way I like to lay out my test is I like to make a subfolder called songs. And then underneath that subfolder, I like to make my test file, which is going to look like this: songs index _ spec.rb. So now if I look on the left over here, I can see the full path to my test is spec features songs index underscore spec.rd. It is important that this is that this ends in underscore spec, just like in mini test, how your test had to end in underscore. Wait, no, I'm sorry. Your test files didn't have to end with it, but the name of your class had to end with test. So in mini test, the class name had to be spelled a certain way. In R Spec, your file name has to end with underscore spec in order for R Spec to see it. In our test, the first thing that we are always going to do is we're going to require that Rails helper. Yeah, this essentially just like loads all of your application code before your test run. So you, at the top of each of these files, we need to make sure that we require this. And then the format for our test is we're going to say R Spec. So we're going to use this constant R Spec dot describe. And then I'm going to give it a string identifier of the thing that I am testing. So I'll say I'm testing here the songs index page. And as I write these describe, so this describe is going to come with a block here, a do and end block. So everything in between this do and end is going to be part of this describe block. It doesn't mean anything right now, but we can just keep that in. So the blocks are very important. This describe, all of our describe blocks are just documentation. They are just, they're more for like organization. The way that we actually write a test is we use it. So it is a command in RSpec that actually denotes a new test. So I will say it shows all the songs. So again, describe is just a descriptor. Inside that describe block, I have an it block that is my actual test. The reason these are called describe and it is because RSpec intended for this to read like English. So describe the song index page, it shows all the songs in the system. So it's supposed to kind of like fit together like a sentence. V, you have your hand.
So when I wrote, when we wrote our tests, we didn't put the R spec, we just started with describe and it looked like it worked. So is that step necessary?
This is completely optional. Yeah.
Oh,
you can take rspec.describe or just describe, either way it will work.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions about this test setup? So now that I have a test, even though it's blank, I can run it. So now I can run my bundle exec rspec. So before we saw 0 examples, 0 failures. Now I want to see a pickup on this test. There we go. So now I have 1 example, 0 failures. Also notice that I see my simple cov output here. I see 43 of 43 LOC, which stands for lines of code, 100% covered. So this is my overall test coverage. This also creates the coverage folder, which has some more. We won't go to it yet. So I mentioned that, let's go ahead and make this test. So now that I have a place to write my test, I'm actually going to write my test. So here's the point where I need to mimic the behavior of the user. So this is going back to our warm-up here. I had you all think about, like, what is a user supposed to do when they visit this song index? Well, they visit localhost 3000/songs, which we said we just want to say they visit /songs. They don't need to click or type in anything, but they should see all the songs in the song table. So that's kind of like our first, like, let's just think about what a user wants to do. Then we translate that into a test. As a user, when I visit /songs, I see each song's title and play count. So that's our user story. Now I need to translate this into code. So as a user, I don't need to do anything to translate that into code. when I visit /songs. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to say visit /songs. And that's all I need to do to mimic that behavior. Then I see each song's title and play count. Well, the first thing that I need before I can test for that is I need some songs in my database. So I mentioned this in our intro to databases class. Our test database by default is going to be completely clean. So in each of my tests, I need to create some test data. So let's say song1 equals song.create. And we'll give it a, instead of doing all this, I'll just copy what I had in my seeds. So we'll copy, let's just copy these first 4. I think that'll be enough to test them. And let me do some cleanup here. So we'll just do the first 2 artists. Cool. So this is what we did this morning. So I create 2 artists. And then using my active record associations, I can create 2 songs for each one of those artists. Sam.
I don't know if I missed a detail, but before you even put anything inside the Rails test or the index R Spec, and you ran it without anything in the test, between the it and the end, it already covered a few lines of testing. Is that because it's running through anything related to index spec? Or if you name it index_spec, it's going to run through the index lines of code?
No, to be honest, Sam, I don't know why it said that we were 100% covered. Yeah, I really don't know.
Okay.
My guess is because we haven't really put much in this app so far, so there's really not a lot to cover. A quick question for the group. This is a little unrelated. Why? So I'm putting these artists in my tests, but we're not testing anything about the artist. We're just testing the song index. So why wouldn't I want to do something just like this? Why wouldn't I just want to do song.create? Because all I really care about is songs. Well, let's just create 2 songs. Gus, what do you think?
Well, we've already created the relationship between songs and artists. So now if we try to create a song without an artist, we get an error.
Yes, exactly. So because we now say that a song belongs to an artist, that means that a song cannot exist without an artist. So this should throw an error. By the way, so that's a good thought. Let's go ahead and do it with let's do it with this bang version of song.create bang and see if we do indeed get that error. And sure enough, we get it. Active record, record invalid, validation failed, artist must exist on index spec line 10. So right here, when we try to create that song, just like Gus said, we need to have that artist. This is also a good reason why we prefer to use create bang in our tests rather than just create. Because watch what happens when I don't do create, when I don't do the bang on the create. I don't get a failure. So what happens is that it fails silently. So even though these lines of code aren't actually going to create my songs, it doesn't give me that output. It doesn't tell me that that failed. So whenever we're like setting up data in our tests, I prefer to put the bang on all of these methods so that it will throw an error if I did something incorrectly. We don't want to do that inside of any of our application code, because for our application, we don't want users to see errors. Okay, so that was a good sidebar, a little bit of review from this morning. Cool. So I've got some songs set up. I'm visiting my index page. So now the final thing for my user story is I see each song's title and play count. So what that's going to look like is I'm going to say expect page dot to have underscore content. And then in here, I say the content that I'm expecting the page to have. So I've said that I want to see each song's title and play count. So I could just put in my string here. I could say my song is called Raspberry Beret. And I could just do this. But this is not great because we're really, we're kind of hard coding our expectations. We're duplicating this line that we have up here. If we wanted to change the title of the song for some reason, like we wanted to change this to, Prince knowledge is failing me, Blueberry Beret, whatever, then I would also have to change it right here. So what we want to prefer to do instead is use variable names. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this to a variable. So let's say beret equals this one. We'll say rained equals this one. So then we can say, rather than this hard-coded string, we can use that object and call this method on it to expect it to have that title. So then I could duplicate this for the rain as well, and I see that I spelled that wrong. So fix that. And then I could duplicate these lines again because I also want to see the play count for each of these as well. And then we'll do the same thing with the Run the Jewels song. So we'll say legend equals this. We'll say talk equals this. And so then I'm just going to duplicate my expectations here. So we're expecting to have legend's title, the talk title, the legend play count, and the talk play count. And you'll notice here that we're leaving off the length. So this is an example of what we talked about earlier. Us as developers, we're kind of making this executive decision that this is only going to show the title and the play count, and we're going to ignore the length. So we would probably have like some requirements from our project manager or something if we were really in a real life development scenario, but because it's just us, we can just kind of take some creative liberty here. So that's what my test for my songs index page looks like. Any questions about anything that I've covered? Gus?
Yeah, so I was looking at the list of like expectations that you can use for Capybara and like some of the actions that you can take, and it looks like you can get like pretty granular as far as like, you know, expect it to like have CSS, like to the point of like expect it to have a header with this text in it. Like what's the standard for like how granular you should be getting with like testing certain CSS tags?
The easy answer is as granular as you need to. Okay. Yeah, what you're pointing to is that Capybara and R Spec have a lot of tools for us that we will need to make use of as our apps get more complex. For now, I don't think we need to quite learn all of them. Yeah, Gus, I really do want to just leave it as like, get as granular as you need to test the behavior that you're trying to test. So if you really need to make sure that there is a header with specific information, then you would write the test that it has that CSS where it's a header. Now, typically, our tests are not going to deal too much with visual elements. So we're not going to need to check, like, make sure that this text is blue and this text is red. And like, we're not going to have to test the styling too much. We're mostly concerned about the data and the functionality.
Okay. Would you say it's like, I guess in that case, it's better to kind of stick with the user story and not really go beyond that, unless it's like in support of making sure a user story works?
Yes. Yeah, I would really focus in on the user story and make that the test for that user story.
Okay, thanks.
Max.
Yeah, and this is probably, we will do this at some point, but I was just wondering what it would look like if you are expecting to have a link to another page. And would that just change like from have content to like have hyperlink or something like that?
There is a have link in Capybara, but you know, I am like, I'll just be upfront with you. Like, I am not going to show you all of the things that you're going to need to know for your tests. So you are going to have to Google some things and try and like figure some things out on your own. But yeah, there are some that like we do want you to know. And I have some more slides that I want to jump back into, so I'll go over some of those. Yeah. The one thing I do want to do is I just want to run this test. So I haven't run this yet, just to see that it works. So bundle exec R Spec. It seems like it's taking longer to load than I would expect. But, no, that's all fine. One thing that I really want to emphasize, and I'll do this again at some point, is that you should never trust a passing test. If you have not seen a test fail, how do you know that the test is working? So you really need to see your test pass before you move on. So because I haven't seen this test fail, like this test could be passing just because I wrote a crappy test. So what I want to do is I want to go into my application code and maybe screw something up a little bit. So let's go to songs controller. And rather than getting all of the songs, let's just get, let's say this is song, actually here, let's do this in the view. So let's go to our songs index page and let's try to comment out this line where we're showing the song title. And notice how this gives me HTML comments. So this should make it invisible to the view. So I think that that should be sufficient to make sure that my test fails. And there we go. Expect to define text, Raspberry Beret, and all songs, blah, 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 blah. Couldn't find it. So this is telling me that my test is in fact ensuring that I am displaying that content on the page. And now I can't delete these comments easily. But that should do it. And now that test will pass. Let me go over some more slides and then I will let you all practice a little bit. So I think I've covered a lot of this, but just to do a little bit of cleanup. So RSpec is our testing framework. This is analogous to Minitest from Mod 1, but RSpec is more robust. So Minitest is called Minitest for a reason. It's not quite as powerful as other testing frameworks. So we do, the Rails community does prefer to use RSpec. All of our test files have to end in _spec. So if your tests aren't running for some reason, this might be why. To run all of your tests, you can run this command that I've shown you, bundle exec rspec. But you can also run a specific file. And the way that you do that is you do bundle exec rspec, and then you give it the path to the file. So this says spec features path to file spec. So what that's going to look like in the test that I just made would be bundle exec rspec, and then the path to the file is spec / and then feature. So I'm going to type F tab to autocomplete, and then under songs S tab to autocomplete. And then because I only have one folder under here, I can just hit tab to find that one. Sorry, because I only have one file, tab will find that one file. So as you have 20 test files, it can take a while for all of them to run. You usually want to just run one file at a time to narrow your focus. Additionally, you can run a single line, or sorry, as the file grows bigger. So I could add another test in here. I could say it, I don't know, it does something else. As I add more tests to this file, I can run this specific test from the file by giving it the line number that the test starts on. And the way that that looks like is the same syntax where I give it the path to the file, and then I add in colon and then the line number of 29. Oops. So that will say, look on line 29 in this test, which is right here, and it will run just that one test. So I'll see from my RSpec output, I should see one example, 0 failures. So even though I have 2 tests in here, it just ran this one example. James.
I was just curious if there's a way, like in Minitest, to just skip tests instead of selecting a specific one, if you could skip others.
Mm-hmm. The way you do that is you put an X in front of your hits. So you say exit. And so then when I run, let's take out the line 29, let's just run this whole file. See how that changes the output? So now it'll say 2 examples, 1 pending. So this is a skip test with the exit. Mike.
In the wild, when you're feature testing like proper web pages, would these test files be massive? Like, because you have so much content on there?
Yeah, I would probably have, so the way that I lay out my test like this, when we will talk about this a little bit more next week, this is going to test, it's going to be very similar to the way my views are laid out. So this is the test for the index page, but you can imagine we might have a lot of things on this index page. And then for each of the things you can do, a lot of times there's both a happy path and a sad path. So for example, what happens if I fill out the form but don't fill it out correctly? What happens then? So yes, as our pages get more complex, we'll have multiple tests inside the same file. And then we will have multiple files inside of our features folder. So.
Brent, I might have missed this when you changed your HTML a little bit. I was just curious so like as compared to mini tests, if one of these expectations failed, like when it all works, you get 1 example, 0 failures. If you had like one thing here fail, would you get a pretty descriptive error message so you know exactly what failed?
Yes, and those error messages are going to be the same as when you do browser-driven development. So like when Tim was messing around and said like routing error, no route matches, you would see the exact same thing pop up in your terminal. So the example that I got, this is one that this is not an example of an error that pops up, but this is a failure. It's saying expected defined text. So if you see anything that says expected this, got this, that means it's a failure, which just means it's not doing the thing. Max.
This might be a thing not for now, but how would you do something like mocks and stubs with this if you don't want to run everything?
Yeah, good question. We are going to hold off on that until a little bit later. That's a good question. The short answer is you would want to. There is built-in mocking and stubbing to R Spec. Yeah. What else do I have here for slides? Run a specific test inside a file. That's what we went over. The line number at the end is n. Yeah, so I said this is the start of the test, but really any line number inside the test will work. Expectations. We've seen an example of this, but this is our format for our expectations. So we say expect, and then our actual value to equal, and then whatever our expected value is. Now, this is when we want something to be exactly the same. We do have different matchers. So the matcher that we just saw was have content. But as one of you have pointed out, there are other things that we can expect. Like we can expect something to have link. We can expect something to have CSS, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a lot of different matchers, but the general format is expect whatever our actual value is. So in this case, the entire page, and then dot to whatever your matcher is, and then whatever you're expecting value is. James.
Yeah, I'm just curious. How do you do a setup in R Spec? Like in mini test, you would just do a setup like method and then use instance variables. How would you do that here?
It is this before each do it. That's what that looks like. That is also, there is a lesson plan called Advanced Testing Techniques. And is it Advanced Testing Techniques? Let me just show you. It's called Testing Best Practices. Sorry about that. Testing Best Practices. And this will go over a little bit more organization, naming things, targeting specific elements, sorting, and then it goes over before each as well. So that's just a heads up for you all that there are, like today, we're just kind of doing an intro into testing. There are some more advanced testing things that we'll cover. R Spec Structure, I went over this a little bit, but we are going to have to always require Rails helper. Our describe blocks are really just groups of tests, and it makes sharing setup easier. Again, like we'll talk about setup a little bit more when we get to best practices. Every test is going to have one outer describe block. So if I go back to Atom, that is this top level describe block. And as we mentioned, RSpec dot is optional here. So we need to have one top level describe block. And then after that, we are going to have any number of it blocks. So it is your actual test. You can have multiple it blocks inside a describe block. And as I mentioned earlier, this is really just meant to be read easily. Describe the songs index page. It shows all the songs, so it's meant to be read like sentences. One thing that I didn't go over here is that you can also nest describe blocks. So what that might look like is if I wanted more description, I could say like inside here, describe like as a user, something like this, and then nest this whole test, maybe both of these tests inside that outer describe. So then we could have describe this, we could keep describing until our heart's content. So these describes are just descriptors. Capybara, these are feature testing tools specifically. These are what gives us all the methods that mimic the behavior of the user interacting with the web page. This is going to give us a headless browser. So it's kind of like there is a ghost of a user using a browser, but it's really all just happening in code. It's not actually happening. Yeah. So some important Capybara methods. The first one that we saw was visit. This is the method that lets us mimic the user going to a web page. Current path. This is what gives us the ability to test the page, what page we're currently on. Page is our page object. So this kind of represents everything the user is looking at. Fill in. This is going to come into play next Monday when we go over passing data. But this is how a user interacts with forms. Click on, click link, click button. This is how the user clicks things. Have content, have link, have button. This is how we expect the user to see certain things on the page. And that's it. So as I said before, there are a lot of things that you can know about feature testing in Capybara. These are kind of like the starting point. You should at least know these by like maybe the first 3 weeks of class. The first 3 weeks of class are mainly going to focus on these core R Spec Capybara features. Okay, I have been talking for a while. I want to give you all an opportunity to practice writing these tests. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you all pick one of these 3 practice user stories, and I'm going to put you into some pairs to practice writing one of these. So just the test, if you have time, you can use TDD to try and implement the feature. But for now, I just want to focus on writing the test. So I did try to list them in order of difficulty. So I think this first story is kind of like our, is very similar to what I just did, where we're visiting a page and we're expecting to see some content. This second story is a little bit more complex, where I'd added in something that I haven't shown you of how to click a link and expect that the link takes you to the proper place. And then I think this third story is even more complex, where we're incorporating some of the ideas from the class earlier, where we have some of that data logic to see the average length of song for the artist, which we did in class. And then something we didn't do, well, I did show you in class, but it wasn't part of the tutorial, was to show a total song count for an artist as well. So yeah, I'm going to make some breakout rooms, and I'm going to try the self-select thing. Yeah, so I'm going to create 3 rooms for each of these. Okay, so let's give this a shot. I've got the breakout rooms open. I've got them labeled with story 1, 2, and 3. Go ahead and pick one of the ones to start working on, to work on. I am going to, as we get three big groups together, I will put you into some smaller groups. And once I put you into that small group, go ahead and work with your partner to write one of these, write out the test for your story.
Hey, Brian. I did update my Zoom, but I still can't see the thing. So do you mind if I get out and come back in, see if that works?
Do you see a Breakout Rooms button?
I do not.
Do you see a like ... more button?
Yeah, but the only thing that is there is record and chat.
Gotcha. Yeah, try and jump out and jump back in and see if you can find it. And then Mike, are you? Oh.
I'm sorry, which room do I have to go to?
You can go to whichever one you want. So you're going to work on one of these 3 stories.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just chill on one.
Go for it. Hey, so for this group, you 3 are the group. So you all can stay in this room and go ahead and work together to write your story.
Cool, thanks.
Let's do it.
Cool, you all have gotten started?
Yes. Is that okay if we do it all together?
Yep. Yeah. You 3 are the only 3 in this group, so you'll just stay in this room.
Cool.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. Okay, so this is our big group here. So the way that I would like to do this for the next 15 minutes is I would like to give everybody, let's have everybody work for about 10 minutes on your own to see how far, to see what you can get on your own. And then we'll do some sharing to see where we get. Does that sound good? Cool. So we'll do 10 minutes of solo.
Hi. You're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm going to put you in group 1. Is that all right? And
okay.
You can be.
You go.
So what I said earlier was pick a room and work on one of these stories. Do you see those stories that I'm talking about?
Yeah, it was. I've got the lesson. It's at the bottom. It says practice user story 1 as a user when I visit the song show page. I'm just setting up my my what's it called set list because I needed to do the gem install.
Cool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put you in that story 1 room. And
Okay.
What I told that group is that we'll take 10 minutes to work through it individually, and then we'll do some larger share. So you're good just working on it on your own for now.
Okay, cool. All right.
Brian, I was wondering if you could possibly look at my VS Code. It's been doing this weird thing, and I don't really know how to make it not do that. And I can kind of walk through that. But so anytime I am going to create a folder underneath a folder, it populates it here. and it won't actually populate it down here. So with right here, I was trying to be like, okay, I want a new folder inside of features, songs, and it did it this morning as well with models. So I have like, I wanted my like models and then features, but it pushes it on this pathway. And I don't know if that's a setting that I could possibly change.
I don't know. I don't use VS Code, so I'm not exactly, I'm not
Okay.
sure.
No worries. The only way I've been able to figure it out is just literally opening it in my Finder and moving it around. But okay, cool. I can stop sharing and head back into my room. I was just wondering.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'm just not too familiar with VS Code. Yeah,
Yeah.
the best recommendation I could make is to like, I mean, I know it's stupid, but like to close it out and restart it. There was Kira from last mod, if you've met her, she had something weird. I think it's very similar to this, and we never figured it out, but it somehow at the end restarting her VS Code was what did it. So
Okay, good to know. Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
So did you already create you have your features?
Yeah, I got
interesting.
the features, the song subdirectory.
Yeah, so I would do show
backlink.
spec.
Show spec.
Yeah.
I'm just
What are we describing? It's this one.
When I visit an artist show page, I see the artist's name. So
it's artist show page?
show page, yeah.
require also.
Does anyone from this group, does anyone have any questions or maybe anything that you've run into so far with trying to build this out? Feeling pretty good?
I don't think I've got
Yeah.
far enough yet to hint anything.
Yeah.
The same. I have one question on, like, when you say rspec.describe, I think I missed what you named, like, highest level. Is it in the index spec? Would it just be like rspec.describe index in quotes?
Yeah, I'd probably say what index you're testing. So song index or artist index.
Sweet. For this one. Sweet. Thank you.
For when you're writing like your it block, like the example in the lesson is like you have a variable song1 equals like capital S, like the class song.create. Is that like, would you just always by default put the bang just all of the time? Like
I do. Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I would recommend it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, you definitely don't need it, but it's just helpful for like debugging.
And one more clarification on that. So like I think it's good practice to put it all the time, but like if you didn't put it on the parent, that's really where you wouldn't run into issues, right? Like it's really like the only time that, I guess, unless you have other constraints, but like in the case of this example, like if you put it on artist, you wouldn't necessarily run into an issue because there's like a song requires an artist. So like, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying. So with the artist, there's less ways that the artist can go wrong, because the reason why we're getting an error with the song is because the song belongs to an artist and that validation would fail. Artist doesn't have as many constraints on it or validations. We will talk about validations next week, but I think it's still just best practice to throw in those creates, even if you're not expecting an error, to catch an error if something does come up.
Totally. Okay. It scared me because we hadn't done that yet on the project, and I was like, "Fuck, they're all broken." But okay.
Yeah, no, it's not, it won't break anything, but it is helpful for debugging. Sorry, I keep saying we're going to talk about validations next week, and I think it's actually week 3.
I would maybe think about interpolating right here.
Right, because
I
we're
see what
looking
you're
at just
saying.
one
Yeah.
artist's
We're looking
page.
at a specific show page. Huh. Okay. Actually, then maybe we shouldn't have multiple artists here because we're looking at a specific show page.
So let's get rid of that. And then I'm not quite sure how we would do this, whether that would be like one, but
Well, wouldn't it be prince.id since that's the artist we're looking at?
Yes. But do we need to, is this then just string interpolation?
Oh, we did it earlier this morning and I don't recall. We could try it this
I
way.
think I would need double quotes.
All right, so I think we've been about 10 minutes here. Let's go ahead and as a group, can I get someone to share your test? Does anybody have did anybody finish this? Or maybe get close to finishing?
I think I finished it.
Aiden, you want to share your screen and show us what you got?
Yeah. Can you see that okay?
I can.
Cool. Yeah, so I set up everything and added all the gems. And then, yeah, what do you want me to go through?
I think this is good. I just want us all to be able to look at this. So let's do this. Could you pull up your browser and could you find the practice story that you're looking at?
Yeah.
Is it up? I can't see it.
Yeah. Oh, it's not loading correctly, so someone else has it. Yeah, I'm getting like an error here. Oh, I know why. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, mine's not working.
That's all right. Let's go back to your test. Really what I want to do is I want to look at the user story, kind of like I did when I was doing it on my own. I want to look at the user story and double check, is my test testing everything in the user story? So I'll just read it. So it says, as a user, when I visit a song show page, so I see you've created an artist and you've created a song. So that looks good. When I visit a song show page, so we're trying to visit it on line 9. And I think we might have an issue with line 9, but that's okay. We'll come back to that in just a second. When I visit a song show page, then I see the song's title, length, and play count. So you have 3 expectations here.
for title, length, and play count. And I would say that this one that you've added for rtj.name is doing a little bit extra of what we've asked for. So you didn't necessarily ask for the artist name, but I would say, you know, it's not horrible that you've included it in here. When we are visiting this songs page, the error that we're running, so can you run your test again? And we can look at the error that we get.
Yeah. What's the command again to run it?
Bundle exec R Spec. So this says no route matches get to /song/ID. So what's going on here? Well, does anybody from the crowd, do you have an idea of how we might fix this? V, what do you think?
Maybe adding a route will help.
Okay, so let's check out our routes file. Okay, so we don't have that route quite yet. So let's try and make that route. So this is going to be songs. The action is going to be called show here. So songs pound show. Don't forget to put a comma before your two.
Always do that.
So the one thing that we're running into here, or that we're going to run into, is when you have, can I do an arrow? When you have this ID in here, that arrow is huge. I don't like that arrow. Give me a second. I want a smaller arrow. Because we've said that this is called ID here, this route is specifically looking for /song/ and then the characters I and D. What we want to do instead is we want to put a colon in front of that ID. And that says that that means that we can accept anything in there as the ID. If you go back to your test, not running your test, go back to the test file.
My bad.
You're good. Right here, when we are trying to visit an ID, rather than putting the character ID in there, we want to make this the ID of our actual song that we're trying to visit. So we don't want it to be colon ID, we want it to be an actual number. So how could we get the ID of that song into this string?
Like that?
Exactly, yeah. What is that called? Does anybody remember?
String interpolation.
Yeah. So we're using string interpolation. So let's interpolate that ID into our route. There we go. Now this test looks good. So from the user's perspective, when they're going to a song show page, they are visiting a song, they're visiting an actual song's, the route will be /song/ and then an ID of a song. So in our test, this should be an actual ID. In our routes file, that's where it's going to get a little bit more general. And we will talk about that more on Monday in our passing data class. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions about this test? I think this looks good. Or any other questions at all?
I've got a question. When I'm running mine, for some reason, I'm getting a failure error. Like title is not defined as a nil class.
Okay, let's check it out. Can you share screen? So part of this might be what I asked you all to do is write the test. If you're having trouble like making the test pass, that might be a different concept. But let's take a look. So undefined method title for nil class. Okay, so this is a good example of like you all just seeing how I'm going to debug this. So it says undefined method title. This is an error. So there is a line of code that is throwing an error. This says that it's happening on show HTML. Let me get my boxes here. So this says it's happening on show HTML line 1. So we'd want to open that up. And so on that line 1, we're seeing @song.title. So it's saying undefined method title for nil class. So what that means is that @song is nil. @song is the thing that we're trying to call a method on. The way that @song would be passed to our view would be from our controller. So let's go to the corresponding controller action. And you can see that part of debugging is find the error and then kind of like work your way backward from that error. So I don't see any show action inside the song controller to set up that instance variable. So Alex, make a method inside of this class called defShow. And here is where I would say @song equal, and then whatever we want our song to be.
Would it just be like a song and then string interpolate the ID?
It's going to be song.find. I'll just have you type this out and we'll explain it more on Monday. Song.find, lowercase find. And then inside find parentheses, params. And params is a hash, and we want to access the key of ID in that hash. So we're going to need to include square brackets to access the hash. Yep, just like that. And now run it and see what happens. Cool,
thank you.
Great job. So that's what that's going to look like. Yeah, so I think this is a good place for us to wrap up class. Yeah, if you all have any other questions, let me know. But if you have any questions, feel free to stick in this breakout room. I'm going to continue to jump in or jump around the breakout rooms. But if you don't have anything else and you're feeling good, you are free to leave. The only thing I'm going to ask you to do is to fill out the survey that I'm going to drop in your cohort channel right now. So as soon as you fill out that survey, you are free to go. And feel free to stick around if you have any other questions.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Welcome.
Thank you, Ryan.
You're welcome. I'm going to check in with the other groups, and then I'm going to come back to this group and I'll get to your question. Hey, y'all. Real quick, I wanted to mention our classes is over for today. I am happy to stick around and answer questions, especially if you all just want me to check to see what you all did. The only thing that I ask is please just fill out the survey for today's class before you log off. And I dropped that in the cohort channel. So yeah, with that in mind, y'all want me to take a look at what you did?
I mean, yeah, I'm already showing. Did we all do something similar, or does this look right, everyone?
My object creation's different from yours, but other than that, it's pretty similar.
Okay. Yeah. It'd be cool if I could check it out after too. While mine's up, I'll just show it really quick. But we made a features page into song folder, or sorry, features folder into songs folder under it, and show spec RB, and descriptions being up here, creating the object here. And this is for story 2, so we have to visit the page first. Expect page to have link. For the identifier, we figured that the identifier would be what we named the link. And to click on it using capybara, and expecting what the current path to be being the song's index. And that's essentially it. And we're just starting the other one. So this is just unfinished here.
Excellent. Yeah, this all looks really good. You're the key things I want to make sure that you're doing, using interpolation to get the route the way that we want it to look like. This looks good. The one thing you really don't want to do is like hard code the ID of 1 in here, because you can't assume that this song, we've seen that the IDs are auto-assigned. We can never assume the ID. So this is a good job interpolating those IDs into the routes. And then also using some methods that we didn't necessarily go over. So have link, click on, and expect current path. That all looks great. Gus mentioned this. The one thing you're going to run into is with your song creation. When we are creating a song, we do need to create it for an artist. And this right here is the artist class we can't say the artist class dot songs. We need a specific artist. So we would need to create an artist first and then say that artist dot songs.
Completely forgot. Yeah. Oops. So artist 1 is equal to.
Yeah, y'all got it. Cool. I'm going to check in with the other group. If you all are good, like feel free to take off. If not, stick around in this room and I'll come back in and check back in.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So the only thing I changed from here to here was commented out this extra like num songs method on artist.
Hey, y'all, if I could interject really quick. So our class is over for today. I am happy to, I've told the other groups this, I'm going to keep bouncing around the breakout rooms if there's any other questions still. And especially if you all want me to like just look at what you did and kind of tell you if it's on what I was expecting or not. The only thing that I ask is before you log off for the day, if you could click on the survey that I dropped in the cohort channel for this class and fill that out. But other than that, Joel, want me to take a look at what you did for your test, or are you feeling pretty good about what you did?
I would love if you want to take a look at it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So, oh, sorry, I haven't figured out all the shortcuts for navigating over here. So, okay, so this is the test.
Okay, so we're creating an artist. We're creating 2 songs for this artist. We got those from our seeds, I guess.
Yep.
Great, so you're using interpolation to visit that specific path. So this is great. You don't want to do anything, like you don't want to assume that because this is the first object we're creating in this test that it has the ID of 1 or anything. We've seen so far in class that IDs are auto-assigned, so we never want to assume what an ID is. So this looks great. Yeah, and then this is a good reuse of this method. So I mentioned this earlier that we can, now that we have this method, we can call it on any artist object. So we can call it on the same artist object that we've created in our test. So this is really good to reuse this method here. This is better. This kind of is very similar before to how I said, if you want to check for Prince's name, you want to say Prince.name rather than putting in the string Prince here. Same thing when we're checking this data logic, we want to reuse this method rather than hard coding like 1257 should be the number. Because if our setup for our test changes and all of a sudden the number changes, that would make us have to change our test expectations and it just like gets really messy. So you all are doing the things that I'm hoping that you're doing here. Another thing that you could do is you could add in an identifier here to say like, rather than just the raw number, we expect a string of average song length, colon, and then the number, just to make our test a little bit more robust. Does that make sense?
So like that?
So inside of that, the first argument to this have content method, let's make it a string. Let's make like a literal string.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I follow.
Make quotes.
Okay.
Actually, here, let's do this for fun. Can I request remote control of your screen? Do you see like something that says give me?
Yes, I see. There you go. Oh.
Wow.
I'd have to restart.
That's
sorry.
okay. That's okay. Just click deny.
Yeah.
So go ahead and, oh, it says, yeah.
So do you mean just like string interpolation like this?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, maybe you do because or maybe not. I could just be lagging. Zoom has been pretty slow for me recently.
Yeah, let me click stop remote control. That's probably why it's messing it up. Yeah, so then at the beginning of the string, we could expect to see some identifier that we might show to the user, like average song length, colon.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Something
okay.
like that.
And then if we ran that, that would fail because it doesn't have this first part yet, because we didn't do that in the HTML. Got it.
Yeah. But that's just something to make your test a little bit better, a little bit more robust. Because have content is literally just expecting the numbers. So this is saying rather than just the numbers, we want to see this long string, which just makes it more robust.
Got it. I have a question on this. So I had written this extra like method from the songs count.
Mhm.
And we didn't test for it. And when it was uncommented, we were getting 58 passing and 59 for coverage. And then when I commented it out, it went 57 to 57. Is that just saying that? So I'm not sure why the passing things went down. I understand why there was one thing that we weren't checking before.
So those aren't passing lines of code. Those are just lines of code that were covered. So that just is checking that a line of code was ran as your test ran. So it's not saying that this is working or not working. It's just saying it was called or not called. So the way that we, can you run your tests again with it commented out?
Yes.
Okay, so we see.
Oh, and this will.
Oh, that's right.
But this will do it now.
Okay. Okay, so that's going to say 57 out of 57. So now go ahead and uncomment it. And run it again. Okay, so it says 58 out of 59. In the last line of your test, go ahead and do prints.numSongs. Prints, your
Oh, Prince, got it, sorry.
Now run your test. And now see how it says that line of code is covered now?
Got it.
Yeah, so it's literally just checking for, was this line executed or not? So just us calling it in the test, now it's covered.
Okay, and that's how we would check to make sure we have coverage for all of the code that we've written. Is that right?
Close. There's another component to testing, which is model testing, which is very related to these model methods that we've defined. So yeah, tomorrow we'll talk about additional ways to test those model methods.
Awesome, thank you.
And a question for you, Brian, before you go. So we've tested that it has the content. Do we also want to test that it has the right content? So do we need to do like expect prints.name .to EQ the right text, or are we only testing for have content?
No, you don't need to test for prints.name. We're kind of assuming that prints has the correct name because that's built into Active Record. Adam, kind of what you're getting at is that we also want to make sure that our models are fully functional, so that if for some reason prints wasn't able to read out the name correctly, that we would catch that. So we are going to have separate model tests to make sure that our models work. So a lot of times testing comes down to a combination of things. If I know that this thing works and I know that this thing works, then I know that together they'll work.
So
or this thing works, and together they work. So then if we add on a third thing, that will also work. That's an example of multiple tests coming together to ensure higher functionality.
So just to reiterate that, then the model testing would cover to make sure that this average is actually spitting out the average.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Cool. If there's anything else, just stay in this room and I will, I'll hop back, but if not, you are good to go. Maybe.
Share my screen. So it's not letting me type code.
It's not letting you type code.
And all the packages are not working, but I try in this window and it works.
Huh. Can you show me? Like, if you hit keys on your keyboard, it's just nothing happens?
For this one, I'm doing Shift Command dot, and it works. And when I do it here, nothing happens.
Can you type normally, or is it just shortcuts that aren't working for you?
You can type, but it doesn't take it as code. Like it acts like the text document.
Well, let's try this. Can you click on down in the bottom, or I'll highlight it for you. Down in the bottom right, it says ERB right here. Can you click on that? And can you search for ERB in that bar? Can you click on the second one, HTML Ruby ERB? Yeah, it still doesn't look like, can you try it again? Does it do anything different now?
No.
Can you close out that file? Are other files behaving the same way?
Yeah. Sure. Oh no, this one is working.
That one is working.
But but it's still weird that the shortcut doesn't work.
Yeah. What I would try is I would try to close out Atom and reopen it and see if it works. Have you tried that?
No. What is that?
Oh, look at that. I would click yes.
I knew that installing a bunch of packages would cause me problems.
Yeah, that's the developer life.
Yeah.
We think something's gonna make our lives easier, and
then we're deadly wrong. Okay, it's fixed.
Okay, yeah, I think that was it.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
You haven't been given, you have no idea how to do stuff. So
Yeah,
it's definitely, it's a slow process, but I don't know.
Documentation reading is something I've been 100% focusing on even more. Whereas before, like last mod was just, we're able to intuitively pick up things because we were taught like the basis of like the tools, like .each, .this, .that. There was really good documentation. But the documentation for like each tool is like, oh, here's what it does within a few lines. Whereas Active Record, I feel, has a lot more going on that we need to understand that puts together these tools. So for me to know like even how this runs SQL commands, I think is really helpful to like reading what the SQL lines that it fires off after even just doing order.select ID is really helpful. But documentation reading has been like the #1 thing I've been focusing on lately, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to snoop or eavesdrop too much. But yeah, I wanted to check in. Is there anything I can help you all with, or?
No, we're just kind of hanging out at this point, so you can kick us out if you need to.
Wait, FactoryBot, Gus. We were both talking about FactoryBot in terms of, well, we were comparing it to how it's being used in AROC, the Active Records Obstacle Course, and we see it's being used. Oh wait, I'm not even sharing my screen. One sec. Let's see. We see it's being used here, but the idea of FactoryBot, I was thinking, was that it helps generate more specific dummy data, if that makes sense, rather than like just test example 1, test example 2. You're able to manipulate using another gem called Faker to have like more specific test randomly generated data. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't do enough reading on it, obviously, but I was looking into that. While you're here, are you able to like just explain like the generic uses of FactoryBot?
Definitely. So FactoryBot, what you're seeing here with this syntax here for create, yeah, it's let me. I just want to look up one of my projects so you can see like maybe a more robust example of FactoryBot. Oh, it's not what it called. Spectacle. There we go. What did I call that? Yeah, this should work.
I could stop sharing my screen if you want.
I can stop sharing.
If you want.
This is good. Okay. Yeah. Seeds file. Okay. So in my seeds file for this this app that I'm making, I've included FactoryBot in here. So you don't really need to worry about that too much. But FactoryBot just makes object creation way easier. So if I need to create 8 items, I can say create list item 8. If I need to create, so this is 7 lines of code here, but I create an item order. I create 2 item orders for my first item. I create 4 item orders for my second one, blah, blah, blah. So you can see in these lines of code, I create 2, 4, what is this, 14, 24, 25, 30 objects here in just these 7 lines. And then I also create 8 items in just these 2. I create 10 item orders in these 2, but I can also say I want these ones to be I want these ones to be inactive. And then for these ones, I want the quantity to specifically be this. So FactoryBot just is really just syntactic sugar. It just makes creating dummy objects a lot easier. The only overhead with FactoryBot is you have to create your factories. So I have to say, if I want to create an inactive item, I have to specifically say, this is what inactive item looks like. I have to say, for a merchant, this is what a disabled merchant looks like. So FactoryBot just gives us the ability to really easily create dummy objects. Faker is what you see me using inside of my factories to generate the data. So FactoryBot generates the objects for us. Faker is going to generate the fake data for those objects. So you can see I'm using Faker commerce product name for my item factory's name. I'm using Faker lorem sentence for a description for this fake item. I'm using Faker number within this range to create a price. And then the other thing that I'm doing here is I'm saying that every item should have a related merchant, because in this app, an item belongs to a merchant and a merchant has many items.
Okay, I get it much better. There was a website I was using, I was explaining, called Mockaroo. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it helps, it helps generate like specific, like if you need a ton of data for, let's say, a SQL table, and let's say one of the column names were country of origin being a string, they already have preset like inputs. Like if you, it's not just going to be like A, B, C, F, G, it's actually going to be like USA, Brazil, stuff like that, based on randomly already inputted things that they expect people to want based on the country of origin being the column name. So I see like for description, lorem.sentence is going to make that like Latin big sample text. That's pretty cool, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, let me, you mentioned like reading documentation, and same thing goes for Faker. Like the only reason I found any of that Faker stuff was through this documentation. So Faker, generators, all of these stuff. Yeah. So if I wanted coffee, yeah, they have a bunch of, they really have almost anything that you want. They have.
It's very oddly specific sometimes.
Hipster is fun.
YOLO tilde farm to table. I might end up using that.
There's there's a lot of fun ones. I think there's a Chuck Norris one that's like like Chuck Norris quote, like Chuck Norris is so strong, blah blah blah.
I have to put this in my project for sure. There's no skip. There's a K-pop one too. Jesus.
I think I just saw a Naruto one. No, yeah. Anyway, yeah. Faker's great, and it just like you said, like rather than just giving you a random, because you could do with Ruby, you could just generate a random string, right? Like you could just generate a random number. But this is
Okay, and on top of that, you can it already expects like relations, like a merchant to product ID, stuff like that. I think that's pretty useful too. You already got me on the hipster part of that, so I'm definitely going to add that into my project.
Perfect.
Cool. Yeah, that explains a lot for me, at least, for sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I am going to be out from here on out, so thank you all so much. I appreciate it. Especially, Gus, thank you for all the walkthroughs for that, too. I really appreciate it. I was missing a lot of details on that, so thanks for that.
No problem.
And thanks, Brian, for the explanation. I am out for now. I'll see you all tomorrow.
See y'all.